Good evening, everybody. This is the Planning Board meeting for May 2nd, 2023. The first item on the agenda is for me to introduce the other Planning Board members. So I'll start down at my extreme left, Steve Webster, who is an alternate. Sitting next to Steve, Roger Murray. Then Doug Braskin, who is the vice chairman of the planning board. To my right, John Thurston, Brad Harriman, who is the representative of the Board of Selectmen, and Julie Jacobs, who is also an alternate. There are two planning board members missing, so Steve, if you wouldn't mind sitting, and Julie.
Oh, me too? Sure.
Okay, all right, very good. So we have 7 members. Before I get started, one of the issues that came up at the last meeting was the fact that people in the audience here really can't hear very well. And so I did meet with our Tim the other day to discuss this. He said that we all, and we're going to have to remind each other, we all have to speak directly into this microphone. If you turn your head, which I do all the time, that then makes my voice fade away and you can't hear it. So, you know, if all the planning board members could say, you know, speak into the mic, that would be, we'll see if that works better. Also, Tim mentioned that the mechanical units in the Great Hall are sort of a disadvantage, and there really isn't much that we can do about that. So anyway, that's the report on that issue, but please, if everybody could just remind each other, that would be great. Okay, there are no public hearings tonight. There were to be, but there was an error in the notice. So all of these will be, all of the public hearings will be on June 6, 2023. All of the abutters will be renoticed, and there will be a new ad in the paper. So that brings us down to the discussion items, and the first item on the agenda is the Hunter's boundary line adjustment, which is a preliminary discussion. This is Hunter's and Walgreen at 50 and 60 South Main Street, and also 19 School Street, and that lot is being consolidated with the Walgreens property.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Randy Tatro with Norway Plains Associates.
Okay. Good
As I
evening.
discussed with Kathy before the meeting, I had planned to be here on the other application that was misnotified. So I felt since I was going to be here, it presented an opportunity to at least do a preliminary on the lot line adjustment in front of the board, to maybe give us a heads up down the road should the project move forward. And obviously the lot line adjustment would be the precursor to any site plan consideration so that the lots were in the right configuration. In this particular case, as I stated in my narrative, there's 2 separate entities owned by the same person, but 2 separate entities. So the lot line adjustment would require not just the planning board approval, signature, and recording, but it would require, you know, deeds to be exchanged for the change in the lot line. So this is the proposed configuration. I mean, this is the existing configuration as far as the way the lots stand now. There's 3 lots of record. The orange lot is where Hunter's previously was. The lot in the back is a vacant lot adjacent to the existing Walgreens building, formerly Rite Aid, which is shown in green. So those are the lot lines as they exist today by deed. This is the location of the, the cleaner, former cleaner building, the white building. So in this proposal, again, it's preliminary, but the preliminary proposal is to raise the white building in accordance with this and readjust the lot line by merging the two back lots. So it would end up in this configuration. So instead of 3 lots, it'd be 2. This lot line would be abandoned. This lot line would be established, which really is a 1,400 square foot difference in this area right in here. And in that area, the parking can be adjusted to be able to keep the parking in the same area in the Walgreens area. Again, it's obviously associated with a potential site plan. Should that go through and get approved, so forth, then the lot line adjustment would be in this scenario. If not, then it wouldn't matter. So that's basically it. Everybody knows where it is and it's in the C1 zone in the business district. There really isn't any other considerations as far as zoning, the lot size. The lot sizes will only change by 1,400 square feet, so there's no issue there. That's the way we'd like to keep it, as far as in the minimal. So again, I just thought it would be a good idea to go before the board and say this is what we'd be doing in a formal application, pre the site review, to make sure the lots that the site review is going to be reviewed under are correct. So at this point, I guess I'd answer any questions from the board as far as those little items go.
Okay, so when you come back with the site plan, we'll just be looking at Hunters, is that correct?
Right, and so when we come back with the site plan, you'll be looking at a lot that looks like this. And if the site plan would be in the orange area, there'd be, and this would be the Walgreens area, depending on what goes on in the back with the little parking area and the pickup window, that may or may not go with the original site plan, depends on, the applicant and so forth, but it may. And it would be under easement because, both properties are owned by the same entity. So in this particular case, we thought that would be the best way to keep the parcels, and how they're going to be used. So again, really it's a lot line adjustment, it's a minor lot line adjustment. There isn't any more complications to it. If for some reason something came up through the site review process where that had to be tweaked, then we'd have to deal with it at that time. But right now, with what I know to date, this would be how it would look as far as just the lots and the reconfiguration of them. Okay,
we have received a couple information items from the Wolfeboro Waters Committee, who's concerned about storm drainage, and then another person sent an email suggesting you relook at the configuration of the Hunters, and did everybody get that one?
I did send those to Randy, and they've been shared with the owner. That probably relates more to the site plan than this, but yes, the information's been shared.
Again, tonight is not, I'll certainly answer whatever if you guys want to talk about something, but generally I was here for the lot line adjustment.
Yeah, right, but
My plan is to come back in 2 weeks with the appropriate people to answer the questions for appropriate things, so that we can have another preliminary meeting on site review issues, and before any formal application is made.
Okay.
And we know that there's certain major ones, i.e. the stormwater management, drainage, item, and landscaping item, lighting item, and, architectural standard item. So at that meeting, I'm hoping to be able to have, again, the appropriate people here to discuss it, and also to kind of focus on them, as, in my opinion, other than what we have to do generally with regular engineering as far as utility access and grading and so forth. Those are kind of the major issues that came out at the last preliminary meeting, and letters and different stuff that have happened so far. So we've been working to get to a point with that we can present, design for those type of things. And I have to meet with the applicant before that to see, what he wants to do. And I plan on doing that, within the next couple of weeks. So hopefully at that meeting, any of the major items that we hear the board or the community is concerned with can be discussed. And at that point, it's going to be up, there's 3 options. Either we get a site plan approved, or he tries to build in the original footprint, which doesn't require any planning board approval, which we all know was a convoluted configuration, so that's probably not going to happen. Or he doesn't do it. Those really the 3 things that can happen. So I'm doing my best to see if I can work through those items and see if we can come to some agreement on that with the board, and then that'll be up to you guys to decide that. Not trying to hide anything. We've worked on each thing that was a concern based on the TRGs in the first preliminary meeting. The schedule's been backed up because of the complexities and the issues with the cleanup. So that's backed me up probably a month. So my hope is if we come to that meeting in 2 weeks and we can come to some middle road on, or decision on what we got to do with those 4 major items, and including any other questions regarding the design, then we'll be in a position to make whatever adjustments we can. That will only give us about 3 weeks to be able to submit for the July the June deadline for the July meeting. So that's why one of the reasons I came for the lot line adjustment, because I'll be submitting the formal lot line adjustment at the same time should everything go well. And I didn't want to spend a lot of time, explaining that, when it's going to be, more time need to be spent on the other.
Okay, let me see if any of the planning board members have questions. Any questions? Go ahead, Roger.
Could you re-explain what's happening with those 5 parking spaces?
Yeah, so with the parking spaces, we're gonna be able to, they're gonna have to be readjusted out a little bit in this area, Roger. And we still have the aisle width to be able to do that. So, we may lose one once we have the real grades on there and we see how it works out. But I think we can save most of them. The other thing is there's going to be potentially, this is all potentially, there's going to be, a transformer in the back and so forth. And so we've tried to be able to use all that and create that new lot line and still be able to save, what we can and still fit in the utilities. So right now, with what I know, like I said earlier, I think we can do it with that little area, with this area right here.
So they'll become Walgreens parking,
Well,
basically.
yeah, there's a lease agreement that basically allows them to park everywhere right now. The lease agreement with Hunter's IGA and Walgreens, allowed them to park in other spots, even though generally most of the people parked here. And as we discussed, at the last preliminary, if we can get some parking spaces out that, and it may solve some of the employee parking. And if there is with the pickup window, it may alleviate a little bit of space right in front of Walgreens, with people that are picking up prescriptions. Again, that's all hypothetical, but
Well, so this shouldn't affect your parking calculations?
no, the parking calculations right now, we're pretty close, you're right, by the letter of the law. But we haven't even counted the off-site parking, which we get to do, and that would blow the numbers out of the water. So we're going to try to keep the numbers to meet it on site if we can, and I think we still can, based on the calculations. But if we happen to go under 1 or 2, right now we're over like 2 or 3. If we happen to go under, then we'll just ask the board for the consideration of the off-street parking. We'll show that.
And will the piece behind the Hunter's lot, School Street lot, that will be potentially shared parking?
Yeah, it'll be shared parking and also be shared access. Because, again, I'm trying not to get into all the site review issues because I don't have any of that with me. But the plan is to have a small door in the back for a small box truck or something that they'd be able to use, if you remember the other design. Yeah. So there'll be reciprocal easements that would have to be in place for that.
Okay, go ahead, John.
This may be a question for Tavis. When you calculate the expansion of 25% for redevelopment of an existing non-conforming, do you count it before you add the extra square footage or after the square footage? After?
I think so. That's what we counted. We counted the new square footage for the calculation. I'll double check that, John, but I think that's the way it is. I think we have to count the proposed for the parking requirements. And again, I don't have the site review stuff with me because I wasn't prepared for that, but my memory is that we were over by 2 or 3. And there, again, without a final design, you don't know how many you're going to lose, So in this particular case, if we lose 5, if we go down to 5 under or whatever, then we will want to include any off-street parking within the approved distance. I know you like the off-street parking. So.
Yeah, well, I was thinking more about the square footage of the expansion of the new building. That's what I was considering.
It's 3,500 square feet, if I remember, pretty close.
You're adding 1,400 square feet of additional area.
Right, and so the area that is used for the parking calculations would be after the addition of it, John. It would have to be. Yeah.
There's also the potential for an existing balance between the last approved parking plan that the planning board authorized. So if the site was required by the board when it had Walgreens and the former Hunters on it, if there were 85 stalls, it's fair that would be the argument for how many stalls were required. And then the additional square footage would, because is the additional square footage actually going to be retail space, or is it cart storage, or is it office, or is it what, It all depends on what that additional area is. In 2 weeks, we'll get into this in more detail.
Yeah. We'll make sure that wasn't one of the items I mentioned, but we'll make sure we clarify that.
I think one of the original calculations that Jason and I did showed that they were almost 10 over by current calcs.
Yeah, that could have been it. And I said 3, 4, but I knew there was plenty. But I think the 2 or 3 was what I was concerned about when the final design was done and all this was taken into consideration. Would we still be even or up 1 or down 1? But we have that buffer with the off-street is all I'm saying. So I don't think, I wasn't as concerned about that as some of the other items to focus on. But we'll definitely have the answers for that the next time.
Doug?
Yeah, Tavis, I think a question for you. I understand the 1,400 square feet lot line adjustment between lots 59 and 58. But would the combination of lots 59 and 60 be a lot merger rather than a boundary line adjustment?
Let me answer that.
It's kind of both.
Yeah, in my opinion, if we weren't coming to the planning board and those lots existed in their same shape, then you'd do a voluntary lot merger. You wouldn't need, you guys approve those routinely. In a case where we're doing a lot line adjustment and merging, and Roger can weigh in on this if he wants, normally the planning board is approving the consolidation as part of that. They don't need to go back and get a merger after the fact, I don't believe.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? Brad?
Nope.
Okay, very good. I was going to go to public comment now,
That's fine.
which is the last, or next to the last item on the agenda, just in case anybody had anything to say. Okay? Okay, I'm going to go to the public comment section. If anyone wants to address the planning board, now would be a good time to do that. Or anything else, I guess, but, well, I'll go to it again.
Microphone. Kathy? Microphone.
Yeah.
Suzanne Ryan, resident. I have a quick question on this, and then looks like somebody else wants to speak, and then I'll get up after them.
Okay.
The question is
Well,
simple.
we'll have another public comment section after we get done with the rest of the items. So go ahead.
Okay, the question to the lot merger is, on the plan on the parking, it shows existing underground propane tank, and then it has an oblong drawing of something there. There used to be, I think there used to be parking spaces there. Are they gone, or is it just that they needed to show where the propane tank is?
Okay, Randy will address that. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Into the mic, please.
Yeah.
Right there, that right there.
Yeah. So that's the way it exists right now, Suzanne. So there's no parking spaces. These are where they are. There may have been some there before, and I got the old site plan in here before they did that. But this is where the little curbing is around the propane tank to protect it right now.
Oh, okay.
You see what I mean?
Yeah. All right,
So those are the only spaces that are there now. And that's going to remain the same.
can they be made into spaces?
Well, that would be a cause for taking the propane tank out, and then you'd have to find another place for that. So I would say no. I don't know that we need to do that.
I mean, can you bury it so that you can have parking on top of it?
It is buried.
Well, can you park on top of it?
I don't think, well, that's a good question. Maybe one for Chuck Clement, but it's, right now, it's like a raised area where they
Yeah.
have
Well, I'm just saying, it's a nightmare in there, driving in, parking,
Yeah.
walking across and around and going over to there and then walking back over here. If you can pick up a space or two.
Okay, speak to us, please.
That would be
Speak to us, okay.
Oh.
All right.
If a space or two, even one or two spaces could be picked up by burying that so you can park on top of it, that would be wonderful.
Okay,
It'd be a plus.
okay, great.
And then, when are you going to do public comment?
After the discussion items,
Okay, thank you.
all right? Anybody else?
Notice went out for 5
No, that will be on June 6th. No, but you will be getting another notice.
Well, this is why we're here.
Oh, okay.
Notice that we sent.
Yeah,
We're just going to excuse.
okay, all right, okay, well, thank you. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll close the public hearing then if no one else wants to say anything. And go on to the, thank you very much, Randy. Go on to the rules of procedure. We sent all that to you in your packet. And if anybody's had a chance to look at it, they were last reviewed in May 19th, 2020. And so it seemed like a good time to re-review it. So if anybody has any suggestions for changes or anything of that nature, let's talk about them. Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, I have a couple of very minor suggestions. One is that we change chairman to chair throughout. And then on page 3, under 2, the last sentence of A, it talks about type of appeal. I think that should be type of application, because we don't hear appeals.
Okay, could you please say where you were again? I'm sorry.
This is page 3, item 2A, the last line.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And it probably doesn't make any difference, and the statute does authorize 5 alternates, but that seems like an awful lot of alternates to have. I think the board's done well with 3. And if you get 5, you can have a hearing with 12 people where 5 of them aren't voting.
Okay. There's the,
And as someone who has appeared before the board, the bottom line is that you want, ideally, the voting members to support your application. Worst case, you want 4 of them. And if you have 5 alternates who may or may not be totally familiar with the procedures, you can get derailed in the discussion. And I think it also, in terms of alternates, means that when you have that many alternates, you aren't going to have people who are engaged more often.
okay, anybody have any comments on those changes? I mean, any changes that we make, or we'll have to, we have to hold the two meetings? Yeah, okay.
Correct.
Okay. Anyone else have any thoughts?
No, I would say that I agree with Roger's comments about engagement, but on the other hand, having a larger quantity of potential potential alternates gives us more flexibility. So I'm not sure which way to go at this point.
Okay.
I think, according to page 4 under amendments, the rules of procedure may be amended by a majority vote of the members of the board, provided that such amendment is read at the meeting preceding a vote.
Right. That's what I just asked Tavis about. Yes.
But that doesn't say 2 meetings.
It says 2 meetings to me. I mean, it could be worded, I mean, to me, it says 2 meetings because the amendment has to be read at the meeting preceding the vote. So you have to read it at a meeting and then read it at another meeting and vote.
Okay, I didn't interpret what you said that way, but yeah, I agree.
Okay, anyone else? Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of reservation about 5 on the alternate side also. I think it is a big board when you get to that point. We have 3 right now. We probably have a nice setting for 3 people, so I wouldn't mind just holding it at 3 at this point.
All right.
Except for, if you read that on the first page.
You have to talk
members
into the mic. Yeah.
Number 3, under members, it does say that you can have up to. It doesn't say you have to have. So if we don't want to appoint a 4th and a 5th, we don't have to. It just says that under the RSA, we can, if we feel like it. Nothing says we got to.
I understand your point, and I think when you start talking about 5 alternates, I think the number gets big is for your table and your board, and if that becomes the case, then so be it. But I'm saying I feel pretty good right now with just the 3 that we have.
Right. I'd just like to maybe just leave it like we could put 2 more on if we needed to. Not just axe it down because it didn't look good. Kind of like to, if we're offered all this stuff, I'd rather keep all this stuff on the table rather than just push some of it aside and not be able to get it back later because we let it go.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any suggestions? Okay, so we'll make corrections that we'll bring back to the board at the next meeting. I don't know if it'll be the next meeting or not, but one future meeting, it will come back for another review. Okay.
Kathy, I just,
Yeah, so go ahead.
just to make sure I'm clear, as I understand it, based on the 2-meeting mention that Tavis made, if we want to amend these, then we have to make the amendments at a meeting and then vote on them at the following meeting.
Right.
So if we don't make the amendment tonight, then it would be 2 subsequent meetings. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
right. And, I mean, you said you wanted to think about it, and probably other people do also, so. Go ahead, Tavis.
I'm just noticing that one of the next item on the agenda is discussion of the Code of Ethics that was modified, and there was discussion at the last meeting of merging the Code of Ethics or some version of it into the Rules of Procedure. So that's yet another amendment that would need to occur before the 2 readings, if you go that way.
Yes, right. Well, that's what I was just about to go on to, and you're right. I mean, I think it would be good if it were in the Rules of Procedure. But anyway, Doug made some corrections, and I made some corrections, took out the Board of Selectmen because it really, Planning Board doesn't have anything to do with the Board of Selectmen. And so this is just for the Planning Board. It's the same, pretty much the same Code of Ethics that we looked at that the Selectmen had sent out to us. So anyway.
To that point, on page 5, on miscellaneous, on number 4, it says annual report shall be prepared by the chairman and submitted to the governing body. Who would be the governing body that you would be referring to?
I don't know. I send it to the town manager, and wherever he sends it, I have no idea. But those are the instructions that I get. And then it appears in the town report.
I think that's what it's referring to, is the annual report for the town report.
Yeah, okay.
You jump back. Never mind.
Okay, so Code of Ethics. Any
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
questions or concerns, or do you think we should have it in the Rules of Procedure?
Kathy?
Yes.
Vaughn was saying that we had like a 5-page long one for just the planning board. Did that surface somewhere rather than
Well,
just this
we had
one-pager?
I brought it to the Planning Board at the last meeting.
So you condensed it all down into just the one page?
This is just the Code of Ethics. And it's just sort of things for us to think about and to do when we're acting as a planning board member. What are you talking about, Brad? The other document that we received at the last meeting?
Julie was.
No, Vaughn said that several years ago, we got like a 5-page code of ethics thing from the lawyer that was working with the planning board at the time. And she had asked why we didn't look at that and update that. No? I imagined it.
I don't remember the planning board looking at anything
Guess I imagined it.
like that.
No, it was said, but,
But she's not here, so we don't know.
right.
Okay.
I can look for one, if that's helpful.
She didn't say how many years ago it was, so it could be lots.
Okay, well, we can certainly ask her about it, but,
Yeah, she said it was more extensive and more pertinent to planning board rather than other things.
Okay. All right,
Maybe
well,
she's got a copy of
meanwhile,
it.
back at this document, does anybody have any comments about it?
In the second paragraph under code, the second member should be deleted. And under 7, it talks about the basis of geography. I'm not sure what is meant by that.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Doug?
No, I would say perhaps geography means, could mean what part of town you live in.
Residency? But you have to be a
What's-
resident to be a member, so.
At the base, okay.
I think it has to stay in there
Why?
because they're pointing out every other equal opportunity thing.
Right.
So it's either you got to put them all in or take them all out. You can just say it's equal opportunity.
Well, it's certainly not a complete or exhaustive list, given current standards.
You could just put a period after the word of
Discrimination.
discrimination and call it good. That's everybody.
Yeah, I think to that point, I would say that we certainly don't want to limit ourselves as to where we're not supposed to discriminate. I'd hate to think that
Yeah,
I would be
right.
able to discriminate for things that aren't listed here.
Equal opportunity discrimination.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
So is
So-
it a suggestion to put a period after discrimination?
Well, I think so.
I think so. This is the type of thing that, when you start listing a list of things that you don't want to discriminate against, you leave 7 or 8 people out and anybody new that comes along.
Good.
It's kind of an all or nothing bucket.
Or you could add an including but not limited to.
Okay,
I would put a period after discrimination and strike the rest. Because on the basis of geography is the difference between North Wolfeboro and Pleasant Valley. That's your geography. It's not like we're across the country or,
And
Okay, so the
perhaps
period-
if it were to merge into code of, or the rules of procedure, it goes in after authority?
yes, yeah, if we could do that, and then at the next time that we look at this, it will be amended, as we have talked about tonight. Okay?
I'm just trying to think of any instance where it might be appropriate to discriminate. And I'm not saying that couldn't occur. If somebody had a personal interest in an issue, then maybe it would be appropriate to exclude them from the discussion. But as I understand it, under the current ordinances, it's up to the individual to recuse themselves.
For whatever reason. Or not recuse themselves.
Yes.
So are you comfortable with this?
Yeah, I'm comfortable
Yeah.
with it.
Okay. Okay, well, we'll make the amendments, and you all have time to think about it, and then we can have another discussion about it at the next meeting, or a next meeting. Okay. Let's see. Tavis, you did give us a new work plan, is that right? I can't seem to...
All I did was finalize the reorganization that was discussed at the last meeting. If the board wants to go further with it, I will make more notes.
No, I just sort of thought it was a good starting place for what we wanted to look at. So that's why you received that. So that will be kind of our work plan. I think it includes everything we all talked about. Okay?
Kathy, before we move
Yeah.
forward, I have one last comment I just noticed on the rules of procedure. Under meetings, item 3, where it mentions the disqualification of a member may be announced either by the chair or a member disqualifying her or himself. And in considering today's climate, I'm suggesting where it says her, himself, change that to themselves.
Okay?
Good idea.
In item 3 under meetings, change herself, himself to themselves,
And take out all of the references to chair,
Yes.
chairman? Yeah, okay.
as Roger had suggested.
Yeah, okay.
What's wrong with the word chairman?
It's gendered.
Masculine.
No, it's the guy that's manning the chair.
I'm sorry?
It's the guy that's manning the chair, be it a them or a who or a what. They're manning the chair.
I think it's chairman as opposed to chairwoman.
Right.
Never chairwoman, never.
Why?
Because you don't woman a chair, you man a chair.
Okay, well, yeah, that's,
Just saying.
So, well, since we're going down the rabbit hole, under officers number 1, second sentence, should that begin they?
I'm sorry, where were you, Tavis?
Officers number 1, second sentence.
You can
Yes.
avoid
Yes.
the pronoun issue by not using pronouns,
Well, I'm just, if that's
and then you get out of the whole discussion.
the direction, I will depronoun the, yes.
okay, all right. Okay. Okay. All right, any concerns about the work plan? I think it's got everything on there that we talked about. And so that's what we'll be doing. Okay. All right, now we're back down to public comment. Anybody wants to address us? Evening? Yeah, I think it's off. Just,
No.
yeah,
Yeah, there we
yeah,
go.
there
It
you
had to
go.
warm up a little bit. Audrey Klein, North Main Street. So I believe that the overwhelming no vote on Articles 2 through 10 was less a comment on the specific details of each article, but more of a vote of non-confidence in the process of developing the articles. This board, your board, like many, is made up of volunteer citizens, most who have little or no background or knowledge of customary planning principles, and therefore take guidance from the professional staff. I hope that in the future, when the board hears from staff the words, "There's a conflict in the zoning," just cleaning up loose ends, "This language doesn't make sense," or "This just needs a tweak," that red flags go up, discussion becomes robust, expectations are increased, and concerned citizens are heard. During some of the discussions, I've listened to pretty much every meeting this year several times so I could pick up on some things and make some comments. The first thing I want to say is sometimes the citizens are referred to as complainers or rabble-rousers. That's very hurtful and demeaning, and I don't think that people are here making comments because they're here because they really care about how things are going. So I hope that the mindset isn't us against them, but that there's a lot of people that have things to say. I think the overwhelming vote means to many that it appears as if the train's left the wharf with no navigator and the wheels are coming off. And so that's why there was so much involvement this past year. I recognize that the citizen involvement may have been late to the party, and that's on us, and I hope we can fix that, and that's why I'm here tonight. I'd like my views on planning to be thoughtfully considered by the board when things come up. And some of what I have to say is very minor, might not mean anything. It might come up later in somebody's thoughts, and some of these things are pretty important to me. So I'm just kind of going to read through some notes I took from listening to the various meetings that you've had. You had a discussion about definitions with half bath and ground floor. It makes sense to define half bath as fixtures, and it might make sense to define ground floor in some simple terms. But there'll be cases where the ground floor isn't obvious, and that outlier case has the benefit of an application for a variance. So optimal zoning wording would ideally impact 95 of potential properties, but for the outliers, there's a variance process, which is specifically in place to address just such situations where the general planning and zoning regulation is a poor fit for an unusual situation. So I don't think you need to struggle with whether you should allow a shower for calves or the need for a decontamination shower, as was discussed in the hearing that night. Those are outliers, and they can be addressed with a variance from the zone, an application for a variance to the zoning board. In response to Planner Austin's comment that construction without a permit, he was speaking of ADUs, will get picked up by the tax assessor. Be aware that people who have proceeded with unpermitted construction are also the same people who deny entrance to the tax assessors, in my experience. So yes, when there's a townwide reevaluation every 5 years or so, the tax assessor will pick up some construction that was not permitted, but I would caution against relying on that process because, again, they don't pick up on all unpermitted construction. In response to Planner Austin's comment that for properties with a complaint of over-occupancy, all the enforcement officer needs to do is write a letter requiring the owner to prove he is not in violation. And that is a vastly simplistic view of how successful enforcement works. It's much more difficult. This next subject is something that I'm really concerned about. And it's regard to the present ordinance language that restricts apartments from the bottom floor in the Bay Street and Wolfeboro Falls area. I think when the board has an opportunity to look at this specifically in a hearing, you'll read through the ordinance and see that this applies to multi-unit buildings, not single family and not duplex. So there was a concern that it didn't seem to fit. Why would you say that, in these smaller areas? Well, it's not meant for that. It's meant for the multi-unit or mixed-use buildings. And the reason why it's necessary to reserve space for commercial uses in the Bay Street and Wolfeboro Falls is because that those areas are going to be intended over time to be distinct neighborhoods populated with families, shop owners, and a year-round local workforce in a variety of less expensive housing options to support the industry and tourism and healthcare and civic needs. And that population needs to be supported with the types of commercial development that serves their daily lives, such as a laundromat, barber, hairdresser, neighborhood child care center, gym, dance studio, dentist, and other businesses that serve repeated needs of local populations. If street-level housing is permitted in the entire zone, eventually this population will need to travel beyond their neighborhood for basic needs that can be better served by local businesses. If you look at inner cities, you'll see that neighborhoods form with clusters of local businesses surrounded by local population. Small towns also have these characteristics. What doesn't have these characteristics is the suburbs, and I definitely don't want Wolfeboro to become a suburb. Neighborhoods is the way to go, and reserving that ground floor space for local businesses is why that language is in our zoning, as far as I believe.
Okay, well, the only reason that came up is because there is an inconsistency in the multifamily.
I'm sorry, what? I can't hear you.
The only reason that came up was because there is an inconsistency, and that's all we were going to address at the public when we talk about this.
Right, and when that comes up, I hope there's conversation about why that's needed and not simply removed because it doesn't seem to make sense or it's a conflict. Downtown is focused on tourism with the type of commercial development that best suits the population: restaurants, gift shops, fine art, theater, museums, musical events, and lake cruises. Wolfeboro Falls also serves a particular section of the population and needs to retain commercial space on the street level for local businesses that serve the direct residential areas. I think possibly that South Wolfeboro could benefit from that as well, and that's not in the zoning, but might be something you consider when you go into this piece of it. At the very least, the major streets and those adjacent to it should be considered for this, to keep this in the zoning. April 18th Planning Board meeting, in the discussion regarding elderly nonprofit housing, the town planner indicated there was a guidance document from legal counsel on how the planning board can review these applications. I am requesting a copy of that guidance document so that I can understand how the board will approach these applications. If I may have that, you can have a discussion on that, but I would like a copy. I recommend that when a topic is listed on the planning board agenda, that the board have the current zoning language in front of them, along with any explanatory material such as maps of the areas under discussion. It appears from listening to the board's conversation on affordable housing that there is little or no understanding of the existing regulations and the areas of town already permitted, which is necessary for the board to determine whether Wolfeboro is offering our share of housing opportunities. We are, in my opinion. Elderly affordable nonprofit housing is permitted by special exception in an area of town that has municipal water supply, largely. Where it is possible and even reasonable for a project to supply wastewater treatment, it's very expensive or even impossible for workforce multi-unit developments to supply the required water for sprinkler systems. To permit such developments outside of the water system is very unlikely to further affordable housing needs, so why allow it? It doesn't make sense. The separate zoning section of inclusionary housing, which is different, allows for a small density increase if you allow a small amount of affordable housing in a development. Again, that's likely to require a huge development in order to spread the cost of providing the water for the fire sprinklers, development of fire ponds and cisterns, to any multi-unit buildings that are proposed in that kind of development. And that potentially could lead to a very large project in an area outside of town, which would be a premature development and kind of head us down the Colden Farms Road, where it takes 25 minutes for somebody to get out there on a medical call or whatever. And that's been kind of the experience with that development. That's it for tonight.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Suzanne Ryan, North Wolfeboro. I've been listening to your work plan in its draft form, and the two things that I hear is perhaps a survey and perhaps a public forum. I think you're on the right track with that, but the discussion I hear about ideas for zoning changes appears to be non-based. We're back to the fact that we don't have statistical information and documentation, and the use of the master plan and the use of your planner to gather information that substantiates what you want to change and why you want to change it. Now, in looking at our master plan last time, the survey was very interesting in that all the items that got the highest percentage of rating were basically aesthetic. What was interesting to me was control of housing growth was 32%, provide guidance for architectural consistency, 29%, encourage more senior citizen housing, we only got 21% of the vote, and then provide land area for commercial and light industrial uses. Since we don't have an interstate, this makes sense, it only got 15%. There's no way to get here. Increased density for single-family residences adjacent to downtown Wolfeboro Falls only got 13% as to being very important. And then increased residential density in downtown Wolfeboro Falls only got 11% of very important. But then you go to the text of the master plan, and it really is saying something different. So this is what I fear, is that if we don't use the statistical information that we have available from the building department, from the tax assessor, from permits that have been issued, and compare it to the 2019 information that you had, I'd be very interested to know in housing types what has increased or decreased. What units have increased or decreased? What year-round homes have been, for summer homes turned into year-round homes? That whole category of housing. We have the statistical information here. Why don't we compare it to today's information and see what the trend has been? Because right now you're talking about ideas and no reason why you want to do those ideas. You've got you can figure out the growth. There's so much you can figure out from what information you have. So I would strongly urge that you all pull out your master plan and not just say, per the master plan, but really dig into it. Ask your town planner. He's got the magic machine over there with that computer. He can find any kind of statistics that you would ever want to find. He should be bringing that to you with your and substantiating your ideas. I'm going to read something from you. I won't be as long as Audrey, but I just want to, in fact, she said some of the things that I would have said. I'd like to just read something to you out of this book that we all have. And it says, in addition to clean water and air, productive mountains, forests, and agricultural open space land is one of the community's most valuable assets and is necessary for the economy and health and welfare of its citizens. The maintenance of this asset is vital in the community, is to provide for future generations with the same quality of life and environment that we have traditionally enjoyed. That's a perfect opening for what you should be thinking about when you're deciding how to change this community, which I'm not so sure people want changed. But that comes out of your book, and that was the goal the state set for themselves that I think should be followed as a community. And then I'll just skip to one other thing. Because I keep hearing that we need this in housing, or we need that type of housing, and yet I have no substantiation of that, I decided to, and I've looked at this before, I'm sure you've all looked at it, but I think it's time to look at it again. It's Statute 674-58, and it talks about affordable housing. And to reflect on what Julie keeps saying about the state mandates, the state mandates, the state mandates. Well, the state mandates with the provision under their ordinance, and I think it needs to be read. If the ordinance and the regulations of a municipality make feasible the development of significant workforce housing to satisfy the municipality's obligation under 674-59, and such development is not unduly inhibited by natural features, the municipality shall not be in violation of their obligation under 674-59 by virtue of economic conditions beyond the control of the community that affect the economic viability of workforce development. Then quickly I'll go to 674-59, And it says, regulations shall provide for reasonable and realistic opportunities for the development of workforce housing. I want to just try to go fast here. A municipality that adopts land use ordinances and regulations shall allow for workforce housing to be located in the majority, but not necessarily all, which you did, all of the land area that is zoned to permit residential uses within the municipality. Such a municipality shall have the discretion to determine what land areas are appropriate. And then it goes on, this paragraph shall not be construed to require a municipality to allow for development of multifamily housings in a majority of the land zoned to permit residential uses. I think I'll just skip down to the last part. Existing housing stock shall be taken into consideration in determining it, and that's why we've got to go back to the master plan, the statistics that you had back then, look at the new statistics of determining the compliance with the section. If the municipality existing housing stock is sufficient to accommodate its fair share, then you're in compliance. Paragraph 1 shall not be construed to require municipalities to allow workforce housing that does not meet reasonable standards of conditions or approved related to environmental protection. And here we go, is the big one: water supply, sanitary disposal, traffic study, fire and life safety protection. So I went to the Office of State Planning. You can do that on your computer. And I found something quite interesting. And this is their 2021 survey results. And they surveyed 234 municipalities that have zoning. And that is just about the whole state of New Hampshire. There's 221 towns and 25 unincorporated towns, 10 counties, 13 cities. So they found 128 adopted zoning, 8 amended the accessory dwelling to allow detached, 5 adopted expanded workforce, 8 adopted short-term rental regs, and 11 adopted solar arrays. So they're out there. Just go see what they did. Planning. 72 towns have 72 towns have full-time planning staff. 72 towns out of, what did I say, 200. So the planning boards are doing the work. 78 have part-time help. 38 rely on a planning consultant. Nice idea. 74 have no staff, and 33 have regional circuit rider. That's where I came from a few years back, circuit rider planner. Housing, 75 out of 221 have workforce housing ordinance and multifamily overlay under 670, is that 104, 58 through 61. Only 49 of these have inclusionary zoning provisions in their workforce housing. 80 employee age restricted housing out of the 221, only 80. What I'm getting at is going back to the statute. It says your fair share, reasonably allow for. And then accessory dwelling units, 204 towns have adopted, 173 owner occupied, 104 allow accessory dwelling detached from principal dwelling. Just under half of that regulate accessory dwelling permits by right. The other half, conditional use or special exception. What's this? Short-term rental. I have a map for you that shows a tiny house short-term detached, short-term rentals, and the blue is with both. And it's short-term rental towns, there's only 18 out of 234. And we're in good shape, because in Lakes Region Planning Development Area, the Lakes Region Planning Commission, that whole, I'll give it to you in a minute, that whole outlined square area, there's only two for tiny houses and one that allows both short-term. We've got our fair share. The rest, it says your region. I would say our region is probably Lakes Region Planning Commission region. That's probably our region. It's empty. They don't have it, just like we don't have it. And then RSA 674-58, 3 through 61, into effect in 2010, requires reasonable, realistic opportunities within the framework of the town ordinance and regulation. The collective impact of all such ordinance, regulations, and proposals for development shall be considered in determining if the opportunities are available. And I would say the opportunities are available, and we're in good shape.
Okay, good, thank you.
We have the two, so,
That's all right.
All right, okay. Yep,
and that's the color coded, so this is our area here.
yeah, right, yeah, we're familiar with it, right. Okay, thank you. No, we've got, but okay, all right, very good, thank you. Okay, anyone else? Well, wait a minute.
Audrey Klein again. I just want to
Yeah,
rebut something
well,
Suzanne.
I just wanted to see if anybody else,
I told her I'd just be a minute. I want to rebut something Suzanne Ryan said. She did talk longer than I did, without a doubt. You talked longer than I did.
I could hear better tonight. Kathy, I had a hard time hearing you.
yeah, I know, because I turned,
Well, and then your head's down.
oh, okay.
So when
all
my
right.
head's
Keep
down,
my
the
head up.
difference is big because you're looking at your, I don't know.
Right.
And then other people just have, John has a booming voice.
Yeah.
So Julie has a booming voice. Wasn't meant to critique you on that. But anyway, the work plan, since I don't have the benefit of seeing it, I was wondering whether the suggestion to look at enforcement is on the work plan for the year.
Well, the enforcement issue is really a procedure that the Board of Selectmen have developed.
But I
and
heard it come
passed.
up here that you might make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, right.
I just didn't want that to get lost because I hear in the community how important that is, particularly equitable enforcement, which seems to be an issue these days. Then I had a question on process. So if community members send comments to Tavis, do those get shared, Tavis?
If I get a comment that's for the planning board, I send it to the chair, and if the chair wants it sent to the board, it goes to the board.
So, for instance, comments that went on Hunters might have did go to Randy, or?
Yes.
Okay, because I've sent comments in before. Nobody ever gets acknowledgement, and so maybe that plays to Audrey's comment where we sort of feel like we're putting ourselves out there and we are called frequent flyers or whatever. We'd like to be known as collaborative citizens. How about that? And I want to applaud Suzanne for her research because I flunked research papers in college and high school, and you really knocked it out of the park, I'm telling you. So data will help you get past speculation. And I think some of the meetings we've been watching, there's a lot of speculation. What does the public want? Well, Suzanne presented data from past surveys. Survey data, current survey data would help. So all the speculation, wouldn't that be aided by data? And there are firms out there that have data, and I think you guys have a budget, right? So, reach out. You guys can't do it on your own. I think that's what we've all learned. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ann. And I'll try and keep my head up when I'm talking. I'll try and keep my head up when I'm talking.
Try holding it here.
What?
Move the microphone closer.
Oh, move it closer, okay, all right. Okay, other business? Anyone have any other business?
I'd like to just comment on what Ann just said about each person who writes a letter. It might be something I think that we should take full advantage of and explain it at every meeting. If you received a letter from whomever, and just make it known that the board received the letter or they didn't receive the letter. That way, when Tavis gets the letter and shares it with you, at least the public knows that it's going to be mentioned.
Okay, well, he doesn't just share it with me, he shares it with every member of the commission.
I'll stand corrected there, but I'm just saying maybe what Ian is trying to say is we can share that with the public also,
Okay.
2 weeks span that people have written in.
Right.
Just an acknowledgement of having received the communication.
I would say 90% of the things I receive from the general public are comments on particular projects. So if you think back to many of your public hearings, there are letters that get referenced at the beginning.
Well, I have received quite a few emails from Ann about the short-term rental, and I have tried to send that all. I've tried to send it all to all the planning board members. So anyway, they do have it. Whether they're reading it, but I certainly can make a list and comment on everything that we've received. Anybody else have anything?
Yes. Well, thank Audrey for her comments also, along with Suzanne, because they are helping us get through this and giving us valuable feedback. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? All right, moving on to the minutes of April 18th. I did have a correction at the top of page 4, where we were talking about the multifamily section of the regulations, that residential apartments are allowed on the first floor. I thought that needed to be spelled out a little bit more. So the sentence should read, she noted that the multifamily section of the regulations makes clear that residential apartments are allowed on the first floor. Anybody else have any corrections or comments?
On the last page, there are two places where Ann Blodgett's name is misspelled. There's only one T. And under...
Whose name?
And-
Logic, got it.
And then in the first paragraph mentioning her name, last line,
Roger, we can't hear you at all.
Cooperative, sorry about that, in the cooperative world, I think that's supposed to be corporate.
Okay, where is that, Roger?
That's mid-page, the first reference to Ann Blodgett,
Oh, okay,
into that last sentence of that paragraph.
Okay. All right, anybody, anything else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to correct the minutes as noted.
So moved?
Seconded.
Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, all right, folks. Tavis, what do we have on, we were going to hear from,
Well, in front of everyone are the comments from Wolfeboro Waters on Shorefront, both the letter about the project and
okay, and that's going to
Shorefront.
be on next time, right?
Correct.
Okay.
There's also going to be the second preliminary conceptual, choose your word, for Hunter's site plan. I think that'll be the majority of the discussion. There's a couple of smaller things, but those are the substantive pieces.
Okay, so that'll be the next meeting. Okay, all right. Anyone has anything else?
Are we-
Oh, go ahead, John.
Are we going to send the Wolfeboro Waters something in return saying we got their comments and we want to?
They've received that and been invited to the
Right,
meeting.
that's why they're coming at the next meeting to make a presentation on the shorefront regulations. Okay? Yep. Okay, anything else? All right, entertain a motion to adjourn. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you, folks.